Hello, brave souls. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we are going to learn about narcissism, an issue characterized by entitlement and grandiosity. We explore the differences between narcissistic behavior and narcissistic personality disorder with Dr. Ramani Durvasula, a clinical psychologist and narcissism expert. From the deceptive charm of love bombing to the heartbreaking impact on victims' mental health, this episode hopes to shed light on the complicated nature of narcissistic relationships and their important psychological consequences.
Let's start with what narcissism is. Entitlement, grandiosity, arrogance, selfishness. They are willing to do whatever they need to do to get ahead. They make more money. They're more successful at dating. They look great on paper. So the very thing we're socialized to think of is not good for us. That's tricky. What's happening during love bombing is it's a period that feels like perfect attunement. A person gets you. This can feel like it is healing a childhood wound. That's how powerful it is. When you ask for time and they say no, that's beyond a red flag. Somebody invalidating you and subjugating you, that's abuse. The very gift we have of empathy and compassion actually gets weaponized. There's anxiety, there's sadness, there's self-blame. You just sort of cut off from you because you're not allowed to have those things and have this relationship. So let's start with what narcissism is, because that's sort of what's foundational. Narcissism is a personality style, which means it's pervasive, it's stable, it's traits, it's patterns, it's behaviors. And in the case of narcissism, it's comprised of lack of empathy or variable empathy, entitlement, grandiosity, arrogance, admiration, the need for admiration and validation seeking, selfishness, superficiality, shallowness of emotion, a need for control. Behaviorally, they show up as manipulative. There's a lot of gaslighting. They're often prone to betrayal. There's a lot of lying, devaluation, minimization, and people who are in these relationships it really do a number on them. So that's all that stuff I described, though, is the personality style and how it shows up. That's narcissism.
Narcissistic individuals often lack insight into their deep-seated fragility and shame, leading to defensive behaviors such as entitlement, grandiosity, and perfectionism.
So there is, within all of us, there's these, just like the planet Earth, there's tectonic plates that move around, and we're not even aware of it, which is why even you and I, exposed to the same stimulus, would have very different reactions. Stimulus is the same. Our reactions are different, and what brought us to that reaction was a series of things that happened within us intrapsychically. Same thing happens with the inner world of the narcissistic person. The healthier the person, the more in touch they are with what's happening internally, right? So that's plumbing the depths. That's the soul work of therapy, where you're like, okay, I see where this is coming from. We're never always going to be perfect, but we might give ourselves grace or make amends very quickly, say, I was out of line. I'm so sorry. I know where that came from, but that's not your problem. I was not okay, kind of thing, right? That's what a healthy person does. For a narcissistic person, they're really not in touch with what's happening, sort of, again, intrapsychically at that deep, deep level. But what is happening is that the internal core for the narcissistic person is quite damaged. The ego is very fragile, and one would even argue malformed. There's a tremendous core of shame in the narcissistic person. So defenses like entitlement, grandiosity, perfectionism, the need to be seen as perfect and great and almost a fantasy object is what keeps, almost to view it as like trying to cap a volcano, right? All of that stuff keeps that lava down, but you can't keep the lava down. Every so often, someone's going to even give a little bit of feedback like, hey, we wanted to give you some feedback on this. Tiny, but that's enough to wedge that cap off that lava and it starts flowing. But instead of that being a self-reflective moment for the narcissistic person who's not in touch with that damaged inner core, because it would be too devastating for them, they lash out at the person who dared move the cap off the capped-off volcano, and the volcano comes out at the other person. The challenge is we don't always know what's going to set a person off, right? I've had people say to me, we're having the most wonderful time, and all I said was, I don't think this is the parking structure for this theater. I think it's the next one over. Are you telling me I can't drive? Rah! And you're like, oh my gosh, it's raining and I didn't want us to walk in the rain. And the person was not commenting on their driving at all. They're reading the sign because they're the passenger, right? And all hell breaks loose. It could be the kind of thing like, oh, I'm so happy you're wearing that sweater again. I love that blue with your eyes. Are you trying to tell me I don't have a lot of clothes? Like I could buy and sell you 100 times. Like, what are you trying to tell me? And you're like, oh my gosh. So what happens when that happens? We don't know how to talk to them anymore. We get more and more tentative. We're walking on eggshells more and more. But for them, they're not in touch with this process, right? That there is this fragile ego. Because to be in touch with a fragile ego means that they're just ordinary like the rest of us. They're just a person. And that's intolerable. Can we do therapeutic work to get them there? I mean, it's very rarely. It's not likely to happen. You need a level of motivation and commitment and willingness to be vulnerable that we're not going to see in 99% of narcissistic people. Are there unicorns? Sure, there's unicorns everywhere. But I'm not opening up private practice based on unicorns. I mean, I've done work with a lot of narcissistic clients. We've done some good work together. We've moved the needle a little bit. Has that needle moving undone the hurts of the people around them?
Narcissistic abuse manipulates victims into doubting their reality through tactics like gaslighting, shaming, and neglect. It often involves a reversal of roles in parent-child dynamics and employs love bombing to create dependency. This abuse targets the victim's vulnerabilities, leading to a deep entanglement in the relationship.
So narcissistic abuse are the behaviors and the tactics that the narcissistic person engages in any relationship. And these are a laundry list, including manipulation, minimization, invalidation, gaslighting, rage, reactivity, entitled rage. I'm more special than you. It's domination patterns like shifting blame, not taking responsibility. This is not my fault. It's your fault. They don't ever take accountability. There is a lot of betrayal. There's a lot of lying. There is a lot of neglect. They will shame people for expressing their needs. Basically, they expect the other person to be in service to them. So that's what the narcissistic abuse looks like. The fallout of narcissistic abuse is what happens to the other person in the relationship, who by and large ends up ruminating about what's happening, regretting what they said or even that they ever got into this relationship. There's anxiety, there's sadness, there's self-blame, self-doubt. There can be over time a lot of dissociation, not separate personalities, but a sort of cutting off oneself from one's needs, one's wants. You just sort of cut off from you because you're not allowed to have those things and have this relationship function. There can be a lot of second guessing oneself, a lot of sense of isolation, loneliness. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. Other people like this person. This person is so successful. It's got to be me. That's why the book's called It's Not You. And so you brought up the idea of what does it look like in parents and what does it look like in intimate relationships? There's commonalities, but also differences, right? So the commonalities in both cases, the narcissistic person sort of usurps the identity of the other person because it's like a one-way highway that only the narcissistic person gets to have their needs met. But if the other person expresses their needs, the narcissistic person will shame them, call them selfish, call them greedy, call them needy, right? And yet the narcissistic person's needs get to be met. Now, you can see how problematic this would be for a child because a child learns very early on that there's almost a role reversal. They are to meet the needs of the parent, the emotional needs of the parent, the public needs of the parent, like make me look good, basically, and everything will be fine. Well, the child has one need and one need only when they're a child, and that's attachment. Attachment is safety. Attachment is security. So the child's not going to roll up and say, you narcissistic fool, I'm not meeting your needs. They're going to say, I better meet this person's needs. And the kid might be recruited into any kind of role from housekeeper to shrink, to keep your mouth shut, to keep the house clean, to don't cause any trouble. Some kids rebel under those circumstances, but a lot of kids learn the family rules so they can stay attached, right? And then if the child did express a need, the parent would say, how dare you? I do so much for you. How could you do this? And the child's like, oh my gosh, how could I have done that? So over time, it's an indoctrination. And the child learns to squelch their needs, squelch their wants, and really believe that a relationship is a place where you only give of yourself and expect nothing back. And if you did ask for something, you're going to be shamed and shut down. So that's the dynamic. If the parent guilts and shames the child all the time, the child internalizes that dynamic, which obviously is a setup for adulthood. But even if you didn't grow up like that and you run into a narcissistic person in adulthood, that kind of dynamic can start in adulthood because a lot of people say, I'm in love with this person. There's a lot of stuff I like about them. I'm attracted to them. They're charming. They're charismatic. They're cool. We're having a good time, whatever it may be. And then after that initial idealization and seduction period we call love bombing happens, a slow descent into devaluation starts to happen. And then your needs do get shamed. And it happens so subtly that at first you're thinking, maybe I did overstretch, or maybe it is me, because healthy empathic people question themselves. That's the nature of empathy, is like, maybe I do need to examine this. So the very gift we have of empathy and compassion actually gets weaponized like a boomerang, and it comes right back at our heads. And so that ends up happening. And so these relationships end up in this really unfortunate reversal. And the greater the stakes in the relationship, whatever they may be, maybe people are married, maybe they have kids, maybe there's a financial reason, cultural reason, religious reason. Now the person in the relationship who's being narcissistically abused is justifying, maybe it's not that bad. I'm being ridiculous. Everyone else likes them. They're super successful. We did have fun last week. I do like how they look. We do have good sex at times. So it gets messy. And that's the nature of the narcissistic relationship, is that it's messy. So a lot of people start to believe, well, relationships are complicated, so maybe this is just complicated. No. Complicated is maybe when you both have two jobs and you're trying to raise kids and all this other stuff. That's complicated. Somebody invalidating you and subjugating you, that's abuse. There's a difference.
We've explored narcissism, from the deceitful tactics of love bombing to the harmful impact of gaslighting. Dr. Ramani Durvasula's insights helped us distinguish between narcissistic features, revealing the true nature of narcissistic abuse. This journey emphasizes the necessity of recognizing the indications of narcissism and provides individuals with the knowledge they need to overcome these difficult relationships on their path to recovery and self-realization.
Today, we're talking about something that many people go through: gaslighting. Our expert, Dr. Ramani Durvasula, will help us spot the signs and give valuable advice on dealing with this kind of emotional mistreatment. If you've ever felt confused about what's real, you definitely want to see this video.
Have you heard of gaslighting? Here to explain what it is, how to spot the signs, and perhaps most importantly, what to do. But in this video, we're talking about gaslighting.
Yeah.
What is that?
So gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse. It's where a person doubts the reality of another person, leaving that other person very, very confused. Gaslighting is sort of a signature tool of the narcissist. And they're often engaging in it to protect their fragile egos, to keep the world in line with their own reality, with little regard of how much it hurts another person when we doubt theirs. So again, it's very much a tool of manipulation, of emotional abuse, of, again, second guessing someone else's reality.
And there are there are lots of things to look out for, but we're going to go through three of them today. What's the first one?
The first one is when somebody says to you, you're too sensitive, or you have no right to feel that way. When you do that, you immediately tell them that their emotional world is invalid, and you're judging them for it. You have no right to feel that way, as though you are judge and jury on their emotional state.
Right.
Okay? So what that does is it makes a person literally doubt their feeling, and a feeling is a spontaneous experience. So now it's almost like telling someone, you must be too hot, and they're perfectly comfortable, or telling someone they're hungry when they're not.
Yeah.
You know, so this is the emotional, when we do this emotionally, it is termed gaslighting, because the person's like, I thought I was that, but you're telling me I don't get to be angry about this.
Right.
And then some people, when they're told it enough, they believe it.
Right.
When people are given this situation, being told you're too sensitive, you have no right to feel this way, the best thing to do is to not engage at that point, because you can't win. No matter what you say, this person, if anything, by those statements, has shown that they're willing to emotionally manipulate and abuse you. There's nowhere to go in that conversation. So if they say that, maybe if anything, say, no, that is in fact how I feel, and leave it at that. But they're going to keep pushing at you, so you can just let it go. And no, the conversation ends there, instead of you getting into a ongoing conflict with them.
Right. Okay.
The second is deflection. Believe it or not, deflection is a form of gaslighting, because you're talking about something. You might take the time and say, we need to talk about this issue, and sit the person down in a hope of benefiting your relationship. And maybe you raise up something, I don't know, about a lie or about something financial in the relationship, and they deflect it to, well, you know what, now that you brought this up, remember 2 years ago when blah, 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 blah? And now, an issue you're bringing up that's very relevant to here and now, They now are talking about something that happened years ago or something that's unrelated. But when they deflect to a situation that makes you look bad.
And see, what I would want to do is say, excuse me, you're deflecting. But I'm guessing that's wrong.
They'll say, oh, because that situation makes you uncomfortable, doesn't it? And you see what I'm saying? They're going to tunnel.
Oh, sorry.
So when there is that kind of deflection, once again, you can either gently bring it back, say, okay, we can come back to that. Absolutely think we should talk about that if it's important to you. I really want to stick right now, though, to the issue that we were originally talking about. Oh my God, it's really hard to talk to you about. And then they might keep going back and forth. If you have to rein them in more than twice, that conversation is done. You're going to have to either find a different forum for it or realize you may never get to have that conversation.
Yeah, so managing expectations is a reoccurring theme when you are dealing with someone who's a narcissist.
Especially gaslighting.
Yeah.
The third example of gaslighting is that never happened.
Oh.
So to which, most of us, when we're told that, our first tendency, believe it or not, is maybe that didn't. I'll always say, I'm getting a little older. Maybe I didn't remember that. And there will be people, the internet's made this easier. They'll go back over old photos, they'll dig up old emails, and they'll say, ha, there it is. And proud as punch, they'll trot that evidence up to the narcissistic person and say, see? Narcissists don't like getting caught in the inconsistencies of their gaslighting. They will either get angry or they'll deflect again. Oh, how nice. Would you like me to pull out emails that show when you did this to me, then this? And so it's very unsatisfying. I've always said that a surefire sign to detect whether you're being gaslighted in a relationship is you get to the point where you feel like you need to either A, record all your conversations, but I can tell you this right now, if you play back that recording to the narcissist, they're not going to cop to it. They're going to either say, you are such a petty person that you had to feel the need to record our conversation. How dare you? And they will get very sort of morally high and mighty. But you're doing this to preserve your sanity. If you do make these recordings, they're really only for your sanity. You can say, okay, I did say it this way. I didn't say the thing they said. And if anything, that data might give you more conviction to realize this person's gaslighting you and decide what your next step's going to be. Another mistake people make when they're in gaslighty relationships is they write the long email. Because see, the gaslighter never listens to you. They're always deflecting and accusing, you're too sensitive, you're this, you're that. So the person, I'm going to write them an email. And if I can explain it all to them and they can't interrupt me, they're going to get it. No.
Not going to happen.
They're not going to get it. And then these people will spend days, weekends, entire weeks, like writing the perfect email, making sure the language is right. And they send it thinking, well, now they're going to get it. The narcissist is going to reload both guns and they're going to send it all back to you. Sometimes they'll even give you a bullet by bullet. So then they're going to gaslight you on paper. So I think that the simplest advice when you're being gaslighted is to end the conversation because you're going nowhere. But gaslighting does lead people to do these things like emails and recordings. It just only confirms what you already know. It's a very unhealthy pattern. Most people in the field characterize it as a form of emotional abuse. And people who are confused by it, that often contributes to other issues like second guessing and self-doubt and confusion. And at that point, I really think that it's critical to get the mental health services you need, talk to someone about this, and really figure out what you want the direction of this relationship to be.
Yeah, and figuring out that direction requires getting an education. And one of the questions I asked Dr. Ramani was, do they know that they're gaslighting? Here's what she had to say about that. Now, we say gaslighting as if they took a weekend course on gaslighting to implement.
No,
this is a natural trait behavior that they have. So
when we talk about gaslighting, one thing that makes people go mad is they must know they're doing this. Ish. And the reason I say ish is that because of a narcissist's core insecurity, they're singularly motivated to protect themselves and their reality, or their version of reality. And so when they gaslight, it's not like they're, I'm going to manipulate this person. It's not like the evil genius kind of thing. It's the fact that they have no empathy. So they don't stop to think what this kind of conduct would do to another person. They're entitled, so they feel they have the right to do it. And they're fragile, so they don't want to be sort of found out. and they want to protect what they might consider a fail or a mistake. So the combination of those three things come together to make gaslighting an easy out and to minimize anything bad they did. So when they say you're being too sensitive, what that's really saying is, all right, you're having a feeling and maybe I'm responsible, but let's not even, I don't want to talk about it anymore kind of thing. They're just minimizing. And minimizing is a form of gaslighting. So it's probably not an active ha, but it's definitely it's a passive process, which actually makes it more dangerous because they do it without thinking.
Thanks for joining us as we explore gaslighting. Knowing the signs is like having a superpower. It helps you keep your truth and avoid being tricked. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might find it useful. Subscribe for more empowering videos. Stay strong, stay informed, and catch you in the next video. Take care.